I am not endorsing Ted Cruz. I hate Ted Cruz. And I think I'll take cyanide if he ever got the nomination.
New York Congressman Peter King on MSNBC's Morning Joe saying, quote, I hate Ted Cruz. I think I'd take cyanide if he gets the nomination. Now, Peter had a smile on his face, but in terms of political rhetoric, especially for Republicans who are supposed to observe the 11th Commandment, might be a little bit tough. Welcome back to Newsmax TV's coverage of America Votes 2016, the New York primary. Let's continue the discussion with our panel. First, from Newsmax Washington, we've got former Congressman Pete Hoekstra of Michigan. We also have syndicated columnist and University of Maryland economist Peter Morici, and from our Newsmax TV newsroom, host of The Hard Line, which you see weeknights at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Ed Berliner. Ed, first to you, what do you make of that crack by Peter King?
Peter King is a wonderful soundbite machine. He's a guy who likes to get in front of the cameras, and he knows exactly what he's saying. He knows he's going to be quoted. And he exactly was that. Matter of fact, it's funny, JD, he's going to join us tomorrow night on the Hardline. We're going to talk to him about that. And I think after he said that, there were a lot of people who feel like he does, and they were asking if there was going to be maybe a six-pack of cyanide available for a lot of people across America. Peter King has made no doubt about the fact that he doesn't like Ted Cruz. It's interesting you point out how that 11th commandment that everybody needs to get together right now in the Republican Party, I don't think we're there yet. I think we're a long way from that. I think that's going to be the convention plus, as a matter of fact, that's going to go right down to November. And Peter King's going to be one of those guys who will be right out in front saying that Ted Cruz is not the guy. Look, JD, you know as well as I do, and the rest of the panel does as well, there's no love lost for Ted Cruz, and he's not going to get any love between now and November.
Well, we will keep our eyes on what happens, but right now, in the midst of these primaries, perhaps it's too much to ask for unity, much less unanimity. To the phones we go. First up from Pennsylvania, where there's an important contest coming up. It's Trooper Tom. Tom, welcome to Newsmax TV.
Hello, JD.
Hi, sir.
I don't think Obama's leaving office, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
He's trashed the Constitution. He's bypassed the Congress, doing anything he wants with his executive orders. And the last thing is the people. And they're afraid because he's got the IRS and he's got the deputies and sheriffs. And people are just afraid, so he's got everything covered.
Trooper Tom, I thank you for your observation. Let me turn to my old congressional colleague, Pete Hoekstra. Pete, when we hear this on the left, you may recall when we were still serving in Congress, there was a suspicion that George W. Bush would never leave office. But I hear this more and more from people. I don't know if it's just a measure of dissatisfaction or the fact that Congress has failed to stand up to President Obama, and he has taken advantage of certain executive orders. There is a great deal of frustration like that expressed by Trooper Tom and real suspicion about our current commander-in-chief.
Well, I think that's exactly right, JD. I mean, this is a president that has abused and used the IRS for his political advantage. He's done the same thing with the National Labor Relations Board. He's done the same thing with the EPA. He's, declared war on coal and a number of other things. So there's a deep suspicion that this guy and this president who has, not really paid attention to the Constitution will now make the ultimate decision that he will not step down from office. That's not going to happen. This president is going to go on January 20 at noon. We are going to have a new president, and hopefully, hopefully this is a president that is going to be able to instill some confidence back into the system. But this president will be gone.
And this president is gone from our shores right now, it's worth noting, on a trip to Saudi Arabia. But Peter Morici, spending time in College Park at the University of Maryland, I don't know, when you hear some of my conservative friends talk about suspicions that Mr. Obama will not leave, do you chalk it up to fevered imaginings or frustration, or what's your take?
I think there's a bit of paranoia there. The only way I could see something like that happening, we're getting involved in very far-fetched scenarios, is what happens if Hillary Clinton's elected in early November and then 2 weeks later the Justice Department indicts her for her email, sins and so forth. What if an indictment is passed down by a grand jury after she wins the election, but she's not yet taken office? She's still indictable at that point. Then what does the country do for a president? But these are wild scenarios, and I think it's absurd to spend too much time on them. I mean, Barack Obama wants to have a privileged place in history as the first black president and one who accomplished some important social goals in his mind. And we might not agree with him, but he has accomplishments he can point to. And I don't think he wants to leave as Cromwell. So I think we are going to have a new president. I think it's without a doubt that we are going to have a new president.
Well, we've got a new caller on the line from West Palm Beach, Florida. Let's welcome Ryan to Newsmax TV. Hiya, Ryan.
Gentlemen, thank you for taking my call.
You bet.
I want to say I've come across a lot of streams online recently, and, as a young person, finding new news outlets that are really speaking the truth and offering some unique perspectives. I appreciate what you guys are doing. It's a far cry from the mainstream narrative we've been, kind of force-fed my 3 decades on this planet.
Well, we're glad to have you, Ryan, and we're not the media, we're Newsmax TV. Now, we're interested in your observations while you're with us on the phone here, so go right ahead, sir.
Yes, sir. Well, I'd immediately like to kind of disavow the conversation you were having with the previous caller. We are, as you said, going to have a new president in November, and that's just a far-fetched scenario to even be discussing. And I'd like to kind of take it back to the point we were talking about earlier with now Ted Cruz being a mathematically unviable general election candidate, and the fact that the Republican establishment is kind of still propping him up in Kasich to an extent and trying to take delegates away from Trump, I think is a complete affront to what democracy stands for. And I think a lot of people in the silent majority, and we've been talking about that the last, couple of cycles, are finally starting to show up here. So I think it's a very exciting election. I really appreciate you guys' input, and Trump's going to win in a landslide if he gets against Hillary. It's not even going to be close.
All right, we'll see what happens. Ryan, we thank you for your kind words and your prediction. Let me turn to Ed Berliner, because, Ed, you probably saw the headline and the story I saw earlier today. Dateline, Pennsylvania, even if Ted Cruz finishes third in the voting in the primary, he says he's going to pick up half the delegates. Psychologically, given where a whole lot of people's minds are politically, is that a wise strategy for Senator Cruz to be using?
Not even a strategy, really. It's been set in stone in Pennsylvania for generations. We were lucky enough to talk to our chief Washington correspondent, John Gizzi, earlier today, and he pointed out that this is exactly as it has been. Ted Cruz is playing by the rules that are set out at this point, as they are in a number of places. This idea that people are trying to steal votes from Donald Trump is simply not true. The rules have been set for a long time. Certainly it may seem that way, and he may claim that the system is rigged. If the system was rigged, I tend to think he'd have a whole lot fewer delegates right now. But is it a wise strategy? It's a strategy based on the only way he has to go at the moment. And if there's anything that a politician does, it's they will look for whatever avenue they can in order to get elected. They will use the rules. They will twist them. They will bend them. They won't always break them. But he's doing exactly what is expected of a politician seeking to become president.
What's that old response from Garfield the cat? I may resemble that remark. And Pete Hoekstra, maybe you have too, with our name being on the ballot from time to time, as Brother Berliner points out. But the notion, I remember, Pete, when I first got to Congress, you were actually advocating national referenda to get more people involved. I'm interested in your thoughts about delegate selection process. 30 seconds, Pete.
It's a very archaic process. I ran to be a delegate, a Kasich delegate in Michigan. There were 11 of us running. I actually did win, but my alternate, the person that came in second, is a Trump supporter. And so, if you're going to run for president, you need to know the system, how you win the primary, how you get your delegates selected, and all those types of things. In some ways, it's a rigged system, but in this case, it wasn't rigged against anybody. You just need to know what the rules are and take advantage of them.
Read the rules, follow the rules, but for a lot of folks, it's like trying to read how to program the DVD player. Ed Berliner and Pete Hoekstra.
Be careful now, JD. You're dating yourself.
Yeah, unfortunately, I am. It's true confessions tonight. Ed, we thank you for your insights. Brother Hoekstra, likewise. Peter Morici, with that bow tie and that scholarly approach and that hip view on economics as well as politics, we're going to ask you to hang around. And wherever you're watching, we ask you to hang around, and we also ask you to pick up your telephone and dial this number, 1-877-NEWSMAX. That's 1-877-639-7629. We want to get your take on tonight's New York primary and what is going on politically. We'll step aside for a news update with John Bogman following this time out